Oh boy. Oh baby. Are we in for one today? We got a good video coming up here featuring a fellow named J.L. Commons, who I just learned was an author, which you probably could have guessed. Here, let me bring this up for you. J.L. Collins, that's who we're going to be talking about today. He's an author. He wrote a book called The Simple Path to Wealth, Your Roadmap to Financial Independence and a Rich, Free Life. Okay. So this book was written in 2016, it looks like. I want to do another thing here. And I'm going to type in, how much Bitcoin could I have bought with $30 in 2016? We'll see if Google still holds up here. $30 in 2016, you could have bought approximately 3.1 million sats. This is calculated by the price, which is roughly $963. So that would be worth about 3.1 million sats today in US dollars would be about $3,500. So if you just would have bought $30 worth of Bitcoin instead of buying JL's book, you would have about $3,500, which is a pretty good increase. I'm guessing it has outperformed anything that JL mentioned in his book. But we're going to listen to this conversation between HMDK and JL Rollins. And I'm going to try not to interrupt here. We're going to go through the video first, and then we're going to talk about it. It's going to be a fun one. Is Bitcoin a good investment? Here, hold on.
A good investment?
No, it's a speculation.
JL, I love you, man, but you're going to get lit up on the internet. You need to not say this.
Well, I'm sorry, but you asked me the question. I can only give you the answer I have. So let me explain to you what I mean, right? So Bitcoin, as I said earlier, if you bought Bitcoin 10, 15 years ago, you've done magnificently well. I mean, who wouldn't want that? I wish I'd done that. I didn't and still haven't, right? But that's not the question. The question is, where does it go from here? It's at 100,000 or somewhere around.
Right now, we're talking at 100,000. And when I was talking to Du Bois in the group chat, it was at 13,000.
Yeah.
And look at me.
Yeah, but that was then. This is now. So where does it go from now?
Well,
Where does
now
it go
I'm getting
from here?
made fun of, JL, and that's what you're not understanding. And I live with regret, and they're roasting me. And they have laser eyes and like, you dumbass.
Yeah.
You're out here podcasting and doing ad reads when you could have gone all.
Okay, that's the only time I'm going to stop it, I promise. But think about this. The guy's talking about when Bitcoin was $13,000, which wasn't that long ago. And his friends told him to buy Bitcoin, and he didn't. And he has a lot of regret now. And so if you were this guy and you were curious about Bitcoin, do you think that your time would be better spent talking to people who know nothing about Bitcoin, such as J.L. Collins? As we call them, 0-hour dipshits, people who have spent 0 hours studying Bitcoin, but still feel the need to give their opinion on it. So would you rather talk to somebody like J.L. Collins, or would you talk to somebody who actually understands Bitcoin so you could have a better sense of understanding yourself, and maybe you could allocate some of your portfolio into Bitcoin? Which one do you think would be a better idea? Well, he decides to go to J.L. Collins for advice.
All in on Bitcoin and 10x'd it.
Yeah, I think you've confused me with your psychiatrist. I can't help you with the fact you're being made fun of. All I can tell you is that when you look at Bitcoin, it's a speculation. So it's not a currency. It's way too volatile to be a currency. A currency requires stability. Mm-hmm. That's why inflation is such a bad thing, and deflation for that matter. If you can't rely on a currency having a fairly consistent value, it doesn't work as a medium of exchange for goods and services. And maybe crypto will get there at some point, but right now it's not.
Okay.
All right. So let me finish the thought.
Sure.
So it's a speculation in the sense that, like buying gold, like buying exotic cars, collector cars, or artwork, or anything like that, when you buy crypto, you are saying, I am hoping and expecting that somebody at some point in the future will pay me more for this than I paid for it. In the case of Bitcoin, that's been a pretty good bet, although it's been a very wild ride. Anybody who's actually tracked it, you had to endure some pretty dramatic drawdowns at various points. But nevertheless, that has worked out. Not all speculations work out, just like your list of companies up there, right? They don't all work out. You don't have a crystal ball. You don't know where it's going. That's a speculation. An investment, something like VTSAX, which is in all those publicly traded companies, those companies are all filled with people actively working to produce and provide products and services for people who want them. And if they do it well, they will make money doing that. And as part owners of those companies, we benefit from that. They are creating wealth.
Okay, did we learn anything from JL there? He said a bunch of buzzwords, an incredible amount of buzzwords. Speculative, volatile, wild ride, crypto. He threw crypto in there out of nowhere. We were talking about Bitcoin here, but as soon as they kind of start going down a road and they realize that, hey, I know nothing about Bitcoin, I'm going to throw in crypto here. So it really throws everybody for a loop. And then I don't have a crystal ball. And then, of course, at the end, he starts talking about a company that he's clearly invested in, probably part of, because he doesn't understand Bitcoin. How do you go from calling it not a currency to calling it a wild ride to talking about companies? It just, where's the alignment here? So we're gonna watch this again. I'm gonna take a couple deep breaths, but we're gonna go through one thing at a time here and kind of break this down. So let's start this out.
Is Bitcoin a good investment?
No, it's a speculation.
JL, I love you, man, but you're going to get lit up on the internet. You need to not say this.
Well, he's not really getting lit up on the internet. You can see some of the comments here. Let's talk about currencies. How much value has the dollar lost in euros in 20 years? True. Where does it go from here? It's going up forever, JL. True. It's a 4-year cycle. You have to know Bitcoin is the new gold, 500K by 2030. Like, there's no substance there. That's just throwing out random amounts, random dates. It's not really getting lit up. This one, though, this one's true. And I want to focus on this one for the next part here. Bitcoin, way too volatile to be a currency. What about fiat from Venezuela, Lebanon, Nigeria, Argentina, many others, including the US dollar, including the currency here in Canada, which is actually being devalued quicker than some of these countries. If you look at the fiat Canadian dollar, fiat Nigerian dollar, Venezuelan, the Canadian dollar is actually being debased quicker than those in comparison to Bitcoin. Do they lose their status of a currency? Good question. So let's get to that.
Well, I'm sorry, but you asked me the question. I can only give you the answer I have. So let me explain to you what I mean, right?
Okay, so here's his explanation of why Bitcoin is a speculative asset. Let's hear it.
So Bitcoin, as I said earlier, if
you can just tell right off the hop, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. You can just tell he has no idea what he's talking about here. So let's start. If you bought Bitcoin back, yeah, you're probably doing well. You think?
If you bought Bitcoin 10, 15 years ago, you've just done magnificently well.
Correct.
I mean, who wouldn't want that? I wish I'd done that.
Do you think, JL, do you think that has any sort of implications, any sort of bias towards why you don't like Bitcoin still? Because you wish that you would have done it, but instead you wrote a book telling people to do something else? And maybe you feel a little bit foolish about that? And your ego's getting in the way of you actually spending some time to learn about what Bitcoin is, what makes it go from $1 to $110,000 in terms of the exchange rate between dollars and Bitcoin? Maybe.
I didn't, and still haven't.
Still haven't. So this guy has 0 Bitcoin. Clearly has spent 0 hours learning about Bitcoin, but still feels the need to come on to a podcast and give his opinion on it. Instead of going down this road of calling it a speculative asset, calling it not a currency, calling it too volatile, whatever. He should have just said, sorry, what's this guy's name? HMDK. I'm actually not well versed enough to speak about Bitcoin, so let's just move on to a different topic. But instead, he keeps digging his own grave here. He wished he would have bought it. He didn't, and he still hasn't. That would be like me doing a podcast on owning land in Portugal, when I wish that I would have done it 10 or 20 years ago, but I didn't, and I still haven't. I've actually never been to Portugal before. But here's why it's a bad investment. I'm going to tell you why.
Right? But that's not the question. The question is, where does it go from here? It's at 100,000 or somewhere around
right now.
there.
We're talking at 100,000, and when I was talking to Du Bois in the group chat, it was at 13,000.
Yeah,
and look at me.
Yeah, but that was then. This is now. So where does it go from?
So it went from $1 to $100,000. So people were paying at one point $1 for one Bitcoin, which is a pretty big deal at the time. I think that was back in like 2011. It hit $1, and now you need 110,000 or 112,000, 120,000, whatever it is. I mean, soon it'll be $1 million for one of those Bitcoin. Why would you think that trend? What would change? Do you think that the fiat dollar is going to suddenly become more valuable? They're going to stop printing? They're going to stop issuing more debt? Or do you think that the trend is likely to continue of both people adopting Bitcoin, understanding Bitcoin, and also losing complete faith in the dollar? What do you think is more likely there, JL? Just think logically here.
Well, now I'm getting made fun of, JL, and that's what you're not understanding. And I live with regret, and they're roasting me. And they have laser eyes and like, you dumbass.
Yeah.
You're out here podcasting and doing ad reads when you could have gone all in on Bitcoin and 10x'd it.
Yeah, I think you've confused me with your psychiatrist. I can't help you with the fact you're being made fun of. All I can tell you is that when you look at Bitcoin, it's a speculation. So it's not a currency. It's way too volatile to be a currency.
Hold on. You want to see a volatile currency? JL? How about this one? This is the US dollar in Bitcoin terms. Although it looks pretty flat now, but it's only flat because it's so worthless in comparison to Bitcoin. So you can see you're back in March of 2011, February 2011. You could exchange $1 US for one Bitcoin. That was the exchange rate at the time. And then you could exchange 37 cents would get you one Bitcoin. No, other way around. One Bitcoin is worth 37 cents. That's not right. See, even somebody, I'm actually glad that this happened this way because, again, even somebody who has spent 5 years, hours per day learning about Bitcoin, listening to Bitcoin, observing, paying attention to everything that is attached to Bitcoin, it's still hard for me to wrap my head around how much has changed here. So, okay, let's restart this. At this time, you could have traded $1 US for 16 Bitcoin. This is in 2010. It's not really relevant because at the time, only like 50 nerds on the planet were using Bitcoin and knew what Bitcoin was. So we can't really compare that. But it went from 16 Bitcoin for $1 to 5 Bitcoin for $1 to then 1 Bitcoin for $1 to then half a Bitcoin for $1 to 0.1 of a Bitcoin for $1. And then you can see the zeros here just keep increasing. So now you get 0.0090 of a Bitcoin for $1. And then 0.00012 Bitcoin for $1. And then 0.00018 Bitcoin for $1. And then, did we hit 5 zeros here? Yes. No. Is that 5? Yes. 0.000090 Bitcoin for $1. It looks stable just because it's dead. But does that seem like a real stable currency, JL? And this is like the world reserve currency we're talking about here. This isn't Venezuelan dollars or Nigerian dollars, the Naira. This is the US, the reserve currency of the world we're talking about here. So it's like, and then his next point here, he said that inflation's bad. It's like, does this guy even know what he's talking about? He's talking in circles here. He's trying to say that the US dollar is more stable, but inflation is bad. Well, the reason why the fiat dollar, the chart looks like this, is because they have the ability to print it. And if you understood that nobody has the ability to create more Bitcoin, regardless of how many people want to store their wealth in Bitcoin, that's a huge difference. So this guy's talking out one mouth about one thing and then saying the complete opposite of that in the next sentence. Oh, crap. I lost the freaking video here. Hold on. We might have to rewatch it here. No, we're not going to rewatch it. You know, the crappy thing about Instagram is that you can't scroll unless I'm missing something here. But I'm going to pause it here and we'll come back when it's at the right part. I'm not going to waste any of your time. Okay, we're back. Let's listen to JL explain why Bitcoin's not a currency, why it's speculative because it's too volatile compared to the US dollar, and why inflation's bad, which somehow impacts Bitcoin. He's saying that inflation is bad when Bitcoin is literally a hedge, the perfect hedge against inflation, because nobody can print more Bitcoin. Nobody has the ability to. No central bank, no Jerome Powell, no dollar bills, no coins, nothing. Nobody just has the ability to hit buttons and create more of it without actually any energy behind it. But Bitcoin, you can't do that. So he's saying two different things here. So let's listen to it.
It's a speculation. So it's not a currency. It's way too volatile to be a currency. A currency requires stability. Mm-hmm. That's why inflation is such a bad thing. And
do you know what that chart measured that we just showed there? Do you know what this chart shows? When you give people the ability to create money and print money, they're going to print money. And so this isn't, we could flip this around and it would look the exact opposite in terms of Bitcoin to US dollars and what that chart looks like. It's the exact opposite of this. But the reason for that is because they're printing more money because of inflation. That's why the dollar is losing value. It's not stable at all. It's losing its purchasing power. That's why everything's so expensive, because there's more dollars in the system and those dollars are being worth less and less. And the people who are closest to the money printer, they benefit the most from that. And anybody who has assets like real estate, gold, Bitcoin, stocks, anything, they're seeing their wealth go up because there's more dollars out there. And so what this chart demonstrates is not how great Bitcoin is. This is a measuring stick. This is the real measuring stick. This is Bitcoin repricing the dollar and repricing every other asset. If you look at a house, 10 years ago, you could buy a house for 10,000 Bitcoin. Today, that same house is worth 5 Bitcoin. So yeah, more and more people are learning what Bitcoin is. They're buying part of the network, which is Bitcoin. There's more miners securing the network. Yes, but at the same time, all that's happening here is it's being repriced in a currency that cannot be debased, that cannot be manipulated. This is the closest thing we have to a free market, and that's why it's repricing dollars. That's why it's repricing houses. That's why it's repricing everything. Look at any asset over the last 10 years. It's gone down. The price has gone down in real terms, in Bitcoin terms. So that's what's happening here. Inflation is bad. That's correct. So why are you saying that the US dollar, which has been, they printed 40% of the supply in the last 5 years. Why are you saying that that's stable, but inflation's bad? It just doesn't even make sense.
In deflation, for that matter, if you can't rely on a currency having a fairly consistent value, it doesn't work as a medium of exchange for goods and services. And maybe crypto will get there at some.
See, buzzwords: speculative, volatile, wild ride, crypto, and crystal ball. Just buzzwords. That's all they throw out. Nobody was talking about crypto. When did crypto enter the conversation here? Nobody asked about crypto. But because he's out of talking points here, he's gonna just throw out crypto because everybody has this really negative, for good reason, image of crypto, and that's what he's trying to plant in their heads because he doesn't know what he's talking about. And so all of a sudden we went from talking about Bitcoin, now we switched the conversation to crypto, and he's going to switch the conversation again to the stock market, which he obviously understands. But they're not correlated. They're not the same thing. Bitcoin is completely separate from all these things that he's talking about.
Some point, but right now it's not.
Okay.
All right. So let me finish the thought.
Sure.
So it's a speculation in the sense that, like buying gold.
Okay, so he's calling these assets here speculative. Gold.
Like buying exotic cars.
Exotic cars.
Collector cars or artwork.
And artwork. Those are speculative assets in his mind. What else would you call them? Gold hit an all-time high yesterday, $4,200 US. 50 years ago, before we went out the gold standard, you could buy 1 ounce of gold for $35. So gold, either you could look at it one of two ways. Either gold has gone up 100x in the last 50 years, or the dollar, the currency, the US dollar, the fiat dollar, has gone down by 100%. Either one. Has gold really done anything? Has it changed shape, form, more useful, more utility? No. It's just the fact that the currency that he calls stable has been debased so much that assets like gold, exotic cars, art, Bitcoin have gone up. But what else would you call these things? I would call them a store of value. All these things are used as store of value. That's why people hold gold, to store their wealth into the future. They go to work, they earn money, they earn value. They want to store that value somewhere where it's not going to be debased. That's why they store it in gold or cars or artwork. But there's a difference between Bitcoin and exotic cars, right? You can't send me a fraction of an exotic car through a QR code to somebody else, from somebody else in the world, from somewhere else in the world. You can't do that with exotic cars or art. So yes, they're all stores of value, but they have different characteristics. Bitcoin is much more divisible. You also can't take the fractions of a tire off an exotic car and give it to somebody for a coffee. But Bitcoin, it's infinitively divisible. Bitcoin is also portable. Again, you can send it anywhere in the planet in seconds using the Lightning Network, or if you want to wait 10 or 20 minutes, you can use the Bitcoin network anywhere in the world. It's portable. So you're comparing things, you're comparing apples to oranges here. Yes, they're all stores of value, but they have much different characteristics. And so why Bitcoin is going to become a medium of exchange is because the people who add value to the world, they want a place to store that value. And Bitcoin has been proven to be the best store of value. And so unlike exotic cars, unlike artwork, you cannot use those as a medium of exchange, but you can with Bitcoin. And so that's the natural progression here. Collectible, first stage. Store of value, second stage. Medium of exchange, third stage. And then unit of account, fourth stage. So in order for an asset to become a medium of exchange, people have to have faith in it. They have to see it as a good store of value. And Bitcoin has all the characteristics of the perfect store of value. It's the perfect battery. It has no leaks. So when the people who add value to the world, business owners, the people who create things, they want to store that value, wouldn't it make sense for them just to accept that as a medium of exchange? That's how things become a medium of exchange. They have to be a good store of value. So that's where we're moving to. We're going to move from collectible to store of value to medium of exchange and eventually to unit of account. And why a unit of account? Because the supply is fixed. The supply is known. We know exactly how many sats are out there right now. We know how many there's going to be in 100 years from now, and it's predictable. So you can fairly and accurately measure things against that. That's what makes a good unit of account. For the last 112 years, we've had no idea how many US dollars are floating around. We have an amount that they tell us, but they've never been audited before. The Federal Reserve is not federal. They don't have any reserves, and they've never been audited. So when you have a starting point that's broken, how do you measure anything in society? And so the only difference here, the lag, is that people don't understand this, including JL. So that's a medium exchange. It's not just, it has to be a good store of value first, and then you move to a medium exchange. And that's exactly the path that Bitcoin's on right now. Not crypto either.
Or anything like that. When you buy crypto, you are saying, I am hoping and expecting that somebody at some point in the future will pay me more for this than I paid for it.
That's a store of value, JL. It's a store of value.
In the case of Bitcoin, that's been a pretty good bet, although it's been a very wild ride. Anybody who's
there it is. Every time. Every single time. It's been a wild ride. Yeah, because it's 16 years old. It's been a wild ride because nobody understands what this asset is. It's been a wild ride because it's the only asset that's available, open 365 days a year, 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when something happens on a Saturday morning or a Sunday evening, Bitcoin is the only market that can adjust, that can react to that. And that's why it goes up and down. Eventually, it flows back upwards. It's been incredibly volatile upwards, but that's why. But again, when JL wrote his book in 2016, if you would have bought $100 worth of Bitcoin and you fell asleep, you went into a coma for the next 10 years, do you care that it went up and then it went down and then it came back up and then it went down? Or are you just happy that you've 500 extra investment? Like they just keep going back to the anchors, to these buzzwords of volatile, speculative, wild ride. They're not actually saying anything productive there. The most volatile thing in the world right now is the fiat dollar, and it's going downwards volatile.
Actually tracked it. You had to endure some pretty dramatic drawdowns at various points. But nevertheless, that has worked out. Not all speculations work out.
Not all speculations are built the same either. Beanie Babies were, I'm surprised you didn't throw Beanie Babies out there. But they have much different characteristics, much different characteristics. Every asset does. You can't lump Bitcoin in with whatever else you consider to be speculative art. They're completely different things. Again, you can't fractionalize a piece of art. You can't send half a piece of art across the world. There are characteristics. You can't own art. You can own a piece of art until somebody with a bigger gun or a bigger army comes in your house and takes it from you. You can't do that with Bitcoin. But JL doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand the characteristics of Bitcoin. And so he has no business speaking about Bitcoin. It's just, this stuff is just so mind-blowing to me.
Just like your list of companies up there.
Okay, so now we're going from Bitcoin to a list of companies. How is this at all related? I get it. The thing here that would be related is when you go out into the world, you work, you add value, you get value in return for it. And you want a place to store that value. So I guess in a sense, you are kind of a capital allocator of your family. You get to decide if you want to invest in gold, which has been a pretty good bet, or if you want to keep it in a savings account, which is a horrific idea, or in Bitcoin, or in a company, stock market. Okay, so he's going to explain why companies. We've already listened to it, but he says that there's people there, and they're producing things, and they're building wealth, and you can own a piece of that. Okay. Well, what happens when you want to leave the country with your shares? And what's this company he's talking about?
Right. They don't all work out. You don't have a crystal ball. You don't know where it's going. That's a speculation. And investment, something like VTSAX, which is in all those publicly traded companies.
VTAs, whatever it was. Don't care. But the point is that if you wanted, let's say you had $1 million worth of VHSTPs, whatever stock he's talking about here, and you wanted to leave the country, could you do it? Could you hop on a plane and go to a different country and somehow have access to your stock market account, your bank account? Could you do it? No. So that's a property that Bitcoin has that stocks don't. What happens if the CEO of VHSP gets into a fair, or he's caught doing something he shouldn't? Would the company image be affected by that? Would that reputation be affected by that? Probably. Does Bitcoin have a CEO? No. Another benefit to Bitcoin. What if they have they're making a product that all of a sudden becomes obsolete? There's a newer technology that replaces that and their sales plummet. Does Bitcoin have products? Does Bitcoin have a profit and loss statement? No. What happens if the company's doing really well and they want to expand and they issue more shares and essentially debase your share? Could they do that? Yep. If Bitcoin became really popular and everybody on the planet wanted to own Bitcoin, could they issue more shares of Bitcoin? No. Another benefit to Bitcoin. And the list goes on and on and on and on. And what about verification? You have a login to your stock market account and you see how many shares you have of that, but how many other people have ownership of those shares? How many longs and shorts and options have ownership of those shares? How many people are actually having physical stock certificates in their house saying, I own this share? Not many. So you can't verify it. You own specific UTXO, you can verify the fact that it's on the Bitcoin network. Anytime of day.
Those companies are all filled with people actively working to produce and provide products and services for people who want them. And if they do it well, they will make money doing that. And as part owners of those companies, we benefit from that. They are creating wealth.
They're creating wealth, but whatever they're storing their profits in is probably not Bitcoin. And that wealth is deteriorating every second of every day. So this one way longer than I expected it to. I don't know if HMDK will ever see this. I don't know if JL will ever see this. This isn't meant to be like shitting on him, but at the same time, it's like, why? JL knows how little time that he spent actually learning about Bitcoin. Why? Because he's busy writing books. He's busy exploring the company that he mentioned. He's busy advising people on wealth strategies. And he clearly has spent zero time in Bitcoin. So why do people feel the need to hop on podcasts like this with a big audience and just talk completely out of their ass? And, there's a lot of people out there like JL, and I'm picking on him here, but I'm sure if you took a survey, if you had the exact same interview with like 95% of financial advisors on the planet, they would say the exact same things because they've spent the exact same amount of time actually studying Bitcoin. So it's sad. It's sad that the average person who also doesn't know what they're talking about, who are looking to people like JL for advice because they don't understand it. So they look to people who are wearing fancy suits on a podcast. They look to them for advice. But the problem is when these people don't actually know what they're talking about, that creates a negative trickle-down effect where if people went against JL's advice in 2016, they would be very wealthy. And just like today, if they look at this and say, this guy's full of shit, I'm going to buy Bitcoin, you're probably going to be proven correct over the next 10, 20, 50 years because Bitcoin isn't done. Bitcoin hasn't even started yet. Bitcoin is not done. It has not even started yet. And if you understand scarcity, the fact that there will only ever be 2.1 quadrillion sats, if you understand that it has all the same characteristics as gold, except 1,000 times more superior to gold in pretty much every aspect, if you understand that whatever ownership you have in Bitcoin, let's say you have 1 million sats, 0.01 of a Bitcoin, divided by the total supply of Bitcoin, your ownership in the Bitcoin network in the world, if Bitcoin ends up being a unit of account, your ownership will never go down. It will only go up. Why? Because that bottom line, that 2.1 quadrillion sats, the actual available amount, the unlocked circulating supply, will only go down forever. As people lose their Bitcoin, as people pass away, die unexpectedly with their Bitcoin and their family doesn't have their keys, that bottom line, the denominator there, is only going to go down. And so your percentage of that network is only going to go up. It cannot go down. It's impossible for it to go down. So we could go on for 3 hours here talking about it, but I'm going to save it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Send it to JL, tag him in this post. Let's get him. I don't know if we want to have him on the podcast or not. I would like to have a conversation with him. He seems like a really well-spoken, intelligent guy. He's just missing out on this. And he's going to leave a very poor legacy, I think, for his family and for his audience, just because of the fact that he didn't take any of his time to understand Bitcoin, but still had the need to shit on it. So that's why this channel exists, because we want to talk to the average person and explain these principles and these concepts and help people have a better understanding of what this asset is, so they can actually secure their wealth. They can secure and build on their value that they've added to the world. And Bitcoin is by far the best place to do that. And gold's ripping right now. Bitcoin's going to be next. And people like this guy and JL are going to be full of regret in a couple of years from now, because they were just too stubborn and they did not put in the work. So anyways, if you feel like supporting the show here, you can do that. We're not doing live streams on the channel anymore, if you haven't noticed. We're doing them exclusively on, what are we doing it on? Rumble and on Nostr. So hope you enjoyed it. We're going to have more information too about the Visionaries community in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, if you feel like watching the live streams, we're still doing them every day. We're just not doing them here. So have yourselves a great day. Arnie showed up to say goodbye as well. And we'll talk to you on the next one. Bye-bye.